The legacy of the buffalo in the heart of a cowgirl. In the heart of the Wild West, where dust met legend, a story was born. It was about Elizabeth, a mere 150 better tall farm girl, but with the courage of an army. Determined to forge her own path, she left her simple life behind, embarking on her first mission as a cowgirl to track the most wanted outlaw in Texas in the perils of stockyards. Her target, Stephen, a 1.9 tall thief, feared for his cunning and ruthlessness. Stephen was a master of stealth and thievery, a ghost in the shadows leaving a trail of misery. While he preferred to operate unseen, when confronted, he was brutal and cruel, unprincipled, and surprisingly strong for someone not a giant. It was in a rustic saloon in a forgotten town that Elizabeth first heard whispers about the man who would become her destiny. Not about Stephen yet, but about a Texas giant, a cowboy over 2 meters tall who rode a buffalo, an animal as unusual as the rider himself. He was described as a man of few words, but great deeds, tales of how he had captured 2 notorious outlaws single-handedly, with just his cunning and his beast's brute force, spread like wildfire among travelers. Elizabeth, disguised in her travel clothes, observed the commotion. The cowboy, despite his imposing stature, exuded a natural charisma, accepting praises and drinks from an admiring clientele. Among the many horses tethered outside, the solitary silhouette of a massive buffalo stood out, a symbol of its owner's uniqueness. George, the cowboy, noticed Elizabeth's petite figure in the saloon's dim light, his gaze briefly leaving the crowd to meet hers. Mutual silent curiosity crossed the noisy room. However, Elizabeth's objective was clear: the most wanted outlaw, whose whereabouts in stockyards had been whispered to her. Even the attraction to the buffalo riding giant wouldn't deter her mission. Night fell like a heavy cloak over the desert. Exhausted from her journey, Elizabeth sought refuge under a cluster of rocks. She had barely fallen asleep when she was roused by lurking shadows, 3 vile marauders. Elizabeth felt her blood run cold. They approached, their intentions clear: to rob her, and perhaps worse. Terror paralyzed her for a moment, but then the majestic figure of a buffalo burst from the darkness. Riding it was George. A flash of gunfire cut through the air, and 2 outlaws fell, struck with deadly precision. The third, in a panic, tried to flee, but the buffalo, with a deep grunt, trampled him before he could take more than a few steps. The scene was swift, brutal, and incredibly effective. Elizabeth, still breathless, pushed herself up, her gaze fixed on the towering figure that had materialized from the night. How did you know?" she stammered, her voice a fragile whisper against the vast silence that engulfed them. George dismounted thunderclap with an almost ethereal grace, his boots barely stirring the dust. His imposing shadow stretched over her, a sudden comforting presence in the wake of terror. "I was tracking the Texas outlaw," his voice rumbled, a low, steady current in the stillness. "My path led me near, and then I heard the commotion, saw the unexpected situation. Good thing I showed up. Even better that you're all right." He paused, his gaze softening as it met hers. "And I'm glad to see you again. Saw you quickly earlier at the saloon, but not enough to properly say hello." Elizabeth, though still shaken, felt a flush creep up her neck. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and awe, drifted to the massive beast beside him. You actually ride a buffalo?" she murmured, the wonder in her tone genuine. "Amazing. I've never seen such a thing." George's lips curved into a faint, almost shy smile. "It had to be the buffalo," he explained, gesturing to his imposing frame. "Horses, strong as they are, would break down under my weight on long journeys. Thunderclap here, he's built for it." Driven by a mix of adrenaline and an inexplicable pull towards this giant of a man, Elizabeth pushed herself closer. I really wanted to meet you," she confessed, her voice gaining a touch of its natural boldness. Before he could respond, she knelt beside the fallen outlaws, pulling a coil of rope from her pack. With practiced efficiency, she began to bind their wrists, her movements fluid despite her recent ordeal. "What are your plans now?" she asked without looking up, her eyes focused on the novice. Then she met his gaze, her blue eyes shining with a daring invitation. "And would you agree to spend the night getting to know each other better? And how about we catch the Texas outlaw together?" George was visibly startled. His large frame tensed for a fleeting moment, but the audacity of her proposition, coupled with the unwavering determination in her eyes, captivated him. He looked past her, towards the distant horizon, where the faint glimmer of dawn promised a new day and a long, arduous journey. His destination, Stephen, was still far. He pondered the sheer peril of Elizabeth's solo quest, her inexperience, a stark contrast to the unforgiving wilderness. He saw her fragility, yes, but also her indomitable spirit. This little one, he thought, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips, she's got more grit than most men twice her size. He decided it wasn't just safer for them to travel together, it felt undeniably right. He nodded slowly, a silent confirmation of his acceptance. "I accept." The night deepened, and under the vast star-dusted canopy, George and Elizabeth, now properly introduced by name, began to unravel the threads of their lives. George, a lone wolf on a personal mission of retribution, spoke of a past irrevocably altered by loss, a home shattered by the very outlaw they now hunted. Elizabeth, a former farm girl whose quiet life had been abruptly traded for the untamed freedom of the West, shared her dreams of finding purpose beyond the familiar, proving her mettle in a world that once seemed too vast. Light laughter, tentative at first, soon echoed through their makeshift camp, dissolving the lingering tension of the evening's events. Mutual compliments, subtly exchanged, wove a delicate thread of connection between them. George found himself admiring her quick wit and fearless spirit, while Elizabeth was drawn to his quiet strength and unexpected gentleness. "How long have you been living this cowgirl life?" George inquired, a note of genuine curiosity in his deep voice. Elizabeth's smile, bright even in the dim starlight, held a hint of youthful pride. "Actually, this is my first mission," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper, yet brimming with a fierce determination. George's eyes widened in genuine surprise. "It's too dangerous for you," he exclaimed, a rare flash of concern coloring his features. The West was no place for a novice, especially one so small and seemingly vulnerable. "But I've already made up my mind," she declared, her blue eyes blazing with a conviction that brooked no argument. There was no turning back for her, the journey and the challenges of the West. In the weeks that followed, the unlikely duo set off on Stephen's trail. The journey was grueling, a relentless test of endurance and wit. George, a towering force of nature, navigated the arid landscapes and lawless towns with the seasoned wisdom of a man born to the wilderness. He meticulously taught Elizabeth the intricate secrets of survival in the West. How to decipher faint tracks on dusty ground, how to ration precious water under a merciless sun, and how to find shelter from the sudden, violent storms that swept across the plains. Thunderclap, the massive buffalo, became an unwavering constant in their travels. His sheer size and power were a palpable shield against lurking dangers. His steady gait a comforting rhythm in the vast, empty expanses. He was more than just a mountain. He was a silent, loyal guardian, a symbol of George's unique bond with the wild. Elizabeth, for her part, proved to be an extraordinarily swift and eager learner. Her keen mind, coupled with an innate ability to observe even the smallest details, allowed her to absorb George's lessons with remarkable speed. Her unwavering courage, though sometimes bordering on recklessness, perfectly complemented George's immense strength and battle-hardened experience. She was more than just a companion. She became the moral compass on their grim quest, a constant reminder that justice, for her, was not merely about retribution, but about forging a righteous path, even if it meant facing her own limitations. She still struggled with long-range shots, her aim sometimes wavering, a detail George quietly noted, a silent concern tucked away. Yet, her quick thinking and sharp eyes often spotted what his imposing height sometimes overlooked. One sweltering afternoon, while seeking refuge from a brewing sandstorm in the cool embrace of a cavern, their conversation drifted to George's mysterious past. "You're so different from the other cowboys I've heard about," Elizabeth remarked, her gaze fixed on him as he meticulously sharpened a hunting knife. "Why a buffalo? Why this mission?" George hesitated, his eyes momentarily losing focus on the blade, lost in distant memories. "My father, he was a big man like me, perhaps even larger," he began, his voice a low rumble that filled the cavern. "He was a buffalo hunter, but not for sport, for survival. He taught me to respect nature, the raw power of these animals. Thunderclap, he was a gift from an old Native American elder my father once held, promised that the strength of the earth would always be with me." He paused, his gaze meeting hers, a rare vulnerability in his usually guarded expression. "And this mission, it's personal. That outlaw, Stephen, he took everything from me, my family, my home. I'm seeking justice on my own terms." George's concise revelation, though brief, opened a window into his soul, laying bare the profound grief that fueled his relentless pursuit and the surprising origin of his gentle nature amidst such a brutal landscape. Elizabeth listened in empathetic silence, her hand instinctively reaching out to gently touch his. A quiet gesture of profound understanding that transcended words. As their relentless hunt for Stephen led them further south, deeper into the unforgiving fringes of known territory, they faced an escalating gauntlet of dangers. They endured harrowing shootouts in desolate ghost towns, narrowly escaped the suffocating wrath of monstrous sandstorms, and shared their dwindling sips of water under the scorching, unyielding sun. Each perilous challenge they faced, each obstacle they overcame together, inexorably tightened the bond between George and Elizabeth. Her initial admiration for his imposing presence and quiet strength had blossomed into a profound, unwavering respect. His initial enchantment with her fiery spirit and fragile beauty had deepened into a fierce, protective affection, interwoven with an increasing emotional reliance on her keen observations and unwavering resolve. The night spent huddled around flickering campfires, once marked by a respectful, almost formal silence, now dissolved into hours of intimate conversation. They shared laughter over the absurdities of their journey, confessed unspoken fears, and exchanged lingering glances that communicated a silent, burgeoning love, far more eloquently than any words could. Elizabeth discovered layers within George she hadn't imagined, a surprising tenderness for wayward animals, an almost boundless patience for her endless, eager questions, as she absorbed the ways of the West. George, in turn, found in Elizabeth not just a determined woman, but a soul imbued with a purity of spirit and a fierce resilience that he had rarely, if ever, encountered in his harsh existence. She brought a vivid light and a renewed sense of purpose to his life, which had previously been consumed by the singular, bleak pursuit of vengeance. He continued to teach her the art of the revolver, noting her swift progress, but also her continued weakness with long-range precision. However, her cunning intellect and remarkable eye for detail proved invaluable, often spotting nuances that his larger frame might have missed. The confrontation with Stephen and Elizabeth's strategy. Stephen's elusive trail finally led them to a remote, treacherous gorge, a dizzying labyrinth of jagged rocks and hidden caves, a natural fortress for a man who thrived on concealment. They knew they were close. George could feel the cold breath of his long-sought vengeance drawing near, but Stephen, ever the master of deception, had anticipated their arrival. He had meticulously laid a trap. As George and Elizabeth cautiously approached a narrow, winding pass, a sudden, explosive volley of gunfire erupted, forcing them to scramble for cover. Stephen, along with his desperate gang, was lying in wait, perfectly positioned for an ambush. The battle exploded. George, a colossal force, charged forward with thunderclap, deliberately drawing the enemy's concentrated fire, his massive frame a moving shield. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, utilizing her inherent agility and small stature, skillfully maneuvered to flank Stephen's main position. The exchange of gunfire was deafening, the sharp cracks of revolvers punctuated by the thunderous echoes of the buffalo's hooves as he collided against the unforgiving rock faces. Stephen, observing the chaotic struggle from a concealed vantage point, saw in George not just an adversary, but a direct challenge to his infamous reputation. He was a man whose ego thrived on proving his undeniable superiority. With a sudden, predatory surge, Stephen abandoned his hidden position and lunged directly at George, aiming to end the confrontation personally. Despite the vast difference in their sizes, Stephen's raw, brutal strength and his chilling cruelty were terrifyingly effective. In a swift, unexpected move, he managed to trip George, disarming him with a brutal kick. Then, with his formidable strength, he overpowered the towering cowboy, pinning him to the ground. The giant, for the first time, was utterly at his mercy. Thunderclap, sensing his rider's peril, charged fiercely, but one of Stephen's cunning henchmen managed to divert the enraged buffalo with a flurry of well-aimed shots, forcing the magnificent beast back. Stephen, a cruel, triumphant smirk twisting his lips, pressed the barrel of his revolver against George's temple, his body a heavy weight on the immobilized cowboy. "Looks like the big cowboy isn't so untamable after all, eh?" he sneered, his voice dripping with sadistic glee. Elizabeth, who had been witnessing the horrifying scene unfold from a concealed vantage point, felt a sickening wave of despair wash over her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. George was in mortal danger. She knew with chilling certainty that her long-range shooting skills were inadequate. Any attempt to hit Stephen from afar would risk striking George instead. A different strategy was needed, one that was far riskier, but one that played to her unique strengths, her seemingly unassuming appearance, and her innate quickness. She would embrace the role of the helpless farm girl, not the budding cowgirl. With a well-practiced gasp of feigned surprise and admiration, Elizabeth emerged from her hiding spot. She moved cautiously, deliberately leaving her revolver visible in her waistband, but not drawing it. Her walk was hesitant, her blue eyes wide with a carefully constructed innocence and utter astonishment. "By all heavens!" she exclaimed, her voice remarkably sweet and genuinely startled, directing her plea to Stephen. "Such a strong man! I've never seen anything like it. You overpowered him all by yourself." Stephen, caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of such a delicate, beautiful woman, and utterly dazzled by her unexpected presence amidst the dust and chaos, paused. His notorious vanity was instantly inflated. He was a ruthless man, yes, but he also harbored a deep appreciation for being admired, especially by someone as outwardly fragile and beautiful as Elizabeth. The thought of such an exquisite woman marveling at his brute strength utterly pleased him. "It takes more than size to stop a man like me, little lady," Stephen replied, a self-satisfied, arrogant smile spreading across his face. He imperceptibly relaxed his guard, basking in her perceived admiration. George, lying beneath Stephen's crushing weight, strained against his bonds, but the surprise of Elizabeth's bold, unexpected move held him silent, unable to warn her. Elizabeth moved even closer, her eyes locked onto Stephen's, a delicate blend of admiration and carefully feigned terror etched onto her beautiful face. I was so scared," she continued, her voice trembling just enough to seem authentic, "but seeing your strength, it's truly impressive." With those words, she took her final decisive step, closing the critical distance between them. Her arm, which had seemed casually extended in a gesture of meek approach, suddenly rose. With a single, fluid, almost imperceptible motion, her hand snapped to the handle of the revolver tucked into her waistband. Stephen, still utterly captivated by her beauty and the disarming proximity, chuckled. "Glad you noticed, fair lady," he began, his attention completely riveted on her. But before the last word could leave his lips, the sharp, deafening crack of a gunshot shattered the fragile silence of the gorge. Elizabeth's revolver, drawn and fired at point-blank range, did not miss. She wasn't proficient with distant targets, but in this intimate, desperate moment, her raw instinct and the burning urgency of saving George guided her hand with lethal precision. The shot slammed into Stephen's chest with brutal force. He felt the violent impact, the acrid scent of gunpowder mingling with the coppery tang of his own blood in his nostrils. His eyes, once arrogant, widened in disbelieving shock, the surprise and utter incomprehension on his face quickly contorting into a mask of agonizing pain. The formidable strength he had so cruelly paraded moments before utterly drained from his body. He staggered backward, a monstrous puppet with severed strings, before collapsing to his knees and then pitching forward, his lifeless form hitting the dusty ground with a sickening thud. George, now miraculously freed, lay there gasping for air, his eyes darting from Stephen's still form to Elizabeth, who remained standing, the revolver still clutched in her hand, its barrel smoking faintly. The eerie silence returned, broken only by George's ragged breaths and the whisper of the wind. Elizabeth, the unassuming farm girl who had bravely transformed into a cowgirl and who had just against all odds proven herself a true hero, slowly knelt beside George. Her small hand, still gripping the weapon, reached out to touch his arm as he slowly, painstakingly began to recover. The beginning of a new legend, with Stephen finally defeated, his remaining demoralized henchmen scattering into the desolate landscape. George and Elizabeth emerged from the treacherous gorge. News of the outlaws' capture spread like wildfire across the vast territories of the West. But this time, the tale carried a new, astonishing detail. The pivotal, heroic role of the petite yet incredibly brave Elizabeth. She was now the undeniable heroine of the legend, a living testament that true strength resided not merely in physical size or the power of a weapon, but in the sharp cunning of the mind and the unyielding determination of the spirit. Their return to civilization transformed into an unexpected journey of widespread recognition. Rewards, bounties, and accolades were graciously offered and humbly accepted. But the true treasure they discovered lay not in material gains, but in the profound partnership they had forged under the crucible of shared danger. George, with Elizabeth and his loyal thunderclap by his side, found a new, compelling purpose that transcended his former singular quest for vengeance. The purpose of building a future, a life. He would continue to teach her the intricate ways of the unforgiving West, and in return, she, with her unique perspective and vibrant spirit, would show him a different, richer way to live. Elizabeth, former farm girl who had bravely embarked on her very first mission as a cowgirl and, against all odds, proven herself a brilliant, decisive strategist, finally understood that her journey was never just about capturing an outlaw. It was about discovering her own rightful place in the vast, untamed world, and about finding a partner for life, one who saw her for who she truly was, not just her size. Together, the giant and the short, the seasoned cowboy and the audacious cowgirl, the man and his magnificent buffalo, set forth on new, uncharted adventure. They knew, with an unspoken certainty, that in the perilous yet breathtakingly beautiful Wild West, the most valuable treasure they could ever unearth was each other, an unlikely, yet undeniably unbreakable family, united under the boundless Texas sky. The legacy of the buffalo had finally found a heart to call its home, and a cowgirl's courageous heart had at last found its true, destined path. Hey everyone, what did you think of this more in-depth version of George and Elizabeth's story? Do you think we hit that perfect 10 with all these additions and the focus on the details? What was the moment or emotion that resonated with you most in this new narrative? The tension of the confrontation, Elizabeth's surprising intelligence, or the evolving connection between George and her? Don't forget to like this video, share it with anyone who loves a good Western romance with lots of action and a breathtaking heroine, and subscribe to the channel for more content that takes us to worlds of courage and passion. By the way, I'm curious, if you were a character in the Wild West, what would your secret skill be? The one no one would expect from you? Tell us in the comments.